So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a really simple flat bridge that crosses a shallow water feature. In some cases, I think you could do this bridge without the railings and balustrades because the drop is more than likely less than 30 inches. You certainly could in your designs make your drop less than 30 and then you don't need any railings. I've seen this example in a few places. Probably making the path a little bit wider might actually help with that, so it creates a little bit less possibility that one might accidentally fall off or whatever. But in this plan, I've tried to represent as best I can the 2D line work for this drawing. Now, in a pure drafting standpoint, these red lines here represent the decking, and there'd probably be a gap in here, a little bit of a gap, which in the model hopefully I'll be able to show. And also this green is the railing, and if you're looking from above, you wouldn't see these, but I'm actually just leaving them in for this plan because when I model, I think it's going to be a little bit easier. So I have some rather large 6x6 posts. Is probably going to look a little bit out of scale. And these are 4x4s, but we'll go with it. You'll know that you probably just need to do a 4x4 rather than a 6x6. And then I have also usually these, a bridge. How do you meet this DG path to the wood section? And typically you have some kind of buffer or footing or a curb. And so this is just representing that there. And what I'll do is go ahead and start thinking about 3D, but you do need to have the 2D line work in order to understand the dimensions and what's going on. So here we are, and I have a 3D stream already in place, and I put this 6 inches below kind of the zero datum, and you can see it here just to kind of keep it out of the way. But I wanted at least there to be a sense that, like, we're trying to actually go over something, so having it there I think is a good thing. I'm going to start with this with I'm not going to show any posts, I'm not going to show any joists or anything. I'm just going to show basically these boards, which probably are the beams that are holding this thing up, and I think that's pretty much the most important thing in here in terms of like structure, as well as the footing here on the side, or the curb on the side. So first thing I'm going to do is use the old extrude command, and I'm going to get onto my guides layer. So extrude curve, and in this case I'm thinking I do a solid. I'm going to do both sides, and I'm going to go ahead and do 1 foot on either side. So kind of pretend like it goes underground a little bit, and I can copy that there. Let's look at this. This thing is definitely probably a 2x12, so it's pretty burly. So if this, hit DI, go up here. So this is 1 foot, so I can actually, if I'm smart, I can draw a rectangle that will be 1.5 inches. Enter, and then I go all the way up to perpendicular. So this actually gives me my 2x12. That's the beam, and I mean, this is definitely there's 2 of them here, but for the model I'm just running this thing all the way across. And so I'll put this on the edge because it does represent the edge of the decking, the edge of the bridge. So extrude curve, so we'll come all the way, and I don't want this one both sides, so I'll turn this off. And just to make sure I get this right, I'm going to go ahead and snap to a corner, so I want it to be right there. And now let's do this again. Just copy. I'll go inside that box, and I want to hit that outside point there. And there's definitely structure underneath this. If it's really necessary to show it, you need to go ahead and get your, that's where your sort of 6x6s probably come in, and not the 4x4 situation. The decking is in this case almost certainly is 2x4 decking. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and draw me a little guideline that's 1.5 inches, enter, and then I'll make sure that it goes absolutely vertical. Now in the image, right, and as you would think that the decking and the curb and the path are all flush, so I could just extend this a little bit more, but I think I'm just going to be a little bit lazy with this and don't worry about the underground part so much. But I definitely want those to meet, so I went ahead and raised it up, and that should be 1.5 inches, or 0.13 feet if you're doing decimal math in your head. And so from here, I think we could build the balustrades and the decking. I think I want to start with the balustrades and the railings. I think I want to start with the decking, and maybe I'm gonna just leave it without. Thinking I'm just gonna leave it without gaps for this because it just would be so much easier to have to deal with. And maybe let's turn this off for a second. And where are we with our? Ooh, I can't see anything. Well, we'll try to do this. So I know that these are going to be 1.5 tall. Oops. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? This just because the way I'm working here, I'm going to offset this curve 1.5 inches. Enter. Oops, that did not work. Sorry. Do this one more time. 1.5 inches. Enter. And then make sure I hold it up. All right. And then that just gives me my line where I can do some polylines and then join these all together, and then do the old extrude curve move one more time and go all the way to the edge. And then because I know I want this on a different layer, just go ahead and do that and turn this back on and try not to mess things up too much. So go from this corner, and I'm just going to try to find these corners here. You know, this is, honestly, this is not the way to do the snapping, so we'll do a quick. Sometimes you just have to know that it's not working. So I make a layer just for the decking and put it on the decking layer. And turn this off. And honestly, I think I can go ahead and move. We know this is going up here, so this should be easier to think about. And then from here, I got a lot more room to work, and I can just go from corner to corner, just making sure I hit the end. In some cases, it's probably better just to turn some layers off while you're working, because I don't want to mess up. Now, you could array some of this stuff, and I definitely think that more advanced technique of leaving the gaps in here would be something that's worthwhile. But for this kind of render model situation, I don't think it's necessary to be that detailed. And also copying things, you know, maybe grabbing 4 of these and copying them at a time instead of one at a time is also kind of useful. So there's that. So we kind of see we've got at least the bare bones of this, right? And you can see that there's a line there, even though there's not a gap. And now let's go ahead. I think it's time that we extrude our posts. And looking at this, maybe it's, I'm going to go, I don't know what the height is on this actually, but it probably is at least 30 inches. It's not the full, maybe it's 36 inches. So if it's 36 inches above the level of the decking, then this is a foot and something. So I'm going to go ahead and just extrude it up 48 inches or 4 feet. And then I know that I'm 1.5 off here, so it's a little bit below that. Maybe I could add a 1.5 to it, but I'm not really, again, I'm not worried about these details. I just want to point out when I kind of am being a little bit loose with the measurements. And these are really big and burly posts, which are totally unnecessary for this thing, but it gets it in place. And now the top and bottom railing, I mean, we can even do this with the post. Hang on a second. Oops. Be careful with Ghosted. You will go right through it and erase things. So that's why I like to do it this way. So there is a little bit of a angle there. I don't exactly know what angle that is, but if we go down, let's try an inch. And then go here, and then I'm going to go explode that, because actually what I want is to, just to try to figure out a way. It doesn't like to extrude sometimes, so it's often a good idea to just go ahead and I can take these 4 corner points and make a 4-point surface, and then use that surface there to trim that out. And if I delete this, there's nothing there, so it's a good idea to go ahead and just join that trim together. And I have been doing a whole bunch of line work on the 3D layer, which is bad news. So anyway, here's the decking. This isn't the decking, but it'll get moved in a minute. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to have to, because I need this to be angled outwards, I'm going to have to mirror this. And you see how when I'm actually seeing through all that, and it's a bit of a pain, just go to shaded, midpoint to perpendicular, should line up. If your drafting is good, it should line up perfectly. And now if we look at, these are certainly 2x4s, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw, see if I can't draw a 2x4 right here, and then I'll just copy it down. So rectangle, making sure I'm snapped to there, and I come in here, so I'm inside of this, and they'll go 1.5. Make sure you do inches. Enter, and I want to go, it's 2x4, so 3.5 inches. Enter, and this happens a lot, so we'll just, if you don't enter the numbers exactly right, and this extends out probably, like 3 inches or something, so I'll go ahead and do it this way. And you kind of see how I use all 4 panels depending on what I'm doing. And then probably I'm going to go ahead and mirror this right on this center line here. And that's just so I get that line sticking out 3 inches. And now we're going to go back to the old extrude curve. And go all the way to the end of this. Just make sure I'm going to hit it. And that gives us that one. And then, this is, it's usually like a little toe area. So you got, if you're standing there, your toe doesn't kick it. So why don't we do this and just take it up, draw a line that's 0.5 or 6 inches. Get off of OSNAP for a second, and hopefully there it is. There's my polyline. So I'll copy this, and I know I'm going to snap to that corner. So I'm going to get in here, copy. There we go. And so there we got that. Now, one of the reasons I'm not going ahead and just mirroring this is because honestly, I'm just going to build this whole thing and then have it, and I'll just mirror it when I'm done. Probably, there's a way to kind of array these things or whatever, but these things end here and they end at the top. So this will be relatively straightforward. I'm just going to copy, actually, polyline, and I'm going to go perpendicular here, copy this up, And then because this is part of my plan view, I don't want any of that stuff in 3D. That way I can just turn off all my 3D line work. I still have my drafting. So extrude curve, this is kind of an extrusion fest, but when you have these architectural pieces, it tends to be that way. So choose a point to snap to, and we'll just snap this like crazy. And there's your railings. And I always like to do a little render. Doesn't that look lovely? And now we can go back to I have got to mirror this. Now there's a lot of stuff to select, so my strategy is, I know this is on guides, there's probably some issues with some 2D or some 3D line work on that layer, so let me do railing, and then I make this a color where I know what it is I'm dealing with, so I'll make that green. And this is one where I probably, if you're really keeping score, I should have made the first one of those the same. Put it on the right layer first and then copy it a bunch of times. That would save me a little bit of time with about what I'm about to do. And if you miss any of these, it means you kind of have to start over. So it's probably a good idea to do as I say here and not as I do. I typically think about these things when I'm drafting and modeling, but not always. Okay, now that we have that, the reason why I'm actually doing that is because I want to be able to just lock everything so that I can't accidentally touch it. So if I mirror this and I just grab everything, it's only that. So same deal where you go to the midpoint, into the midpoint, and if you have drafted it correctly, it should land in there spot on, which is why the drafting part is so important. And then I can go ahead and turn on this, and then we can just admire our little bridge work. Now, eventually you may end up taking the edge of this and creating a surface that meets, goes from here to say here to the edge of this surface here, so you won't see this underneath piece. And if you're just like, yeah, if I'm not going to see it, maybe I can just trim it out. You can always take that and just trim this. Usually you can do that. Oh, I got that locked too. Can't trim things that are locked. That's the good news. So you could do this move, and if you really just didn't want to show anything underneath, it seemed kind of weird. There you have it, and then you can always cap this thing with the cap command. All right, so I hope that was helpful.